tired of sitting by her sister on the bank and of having nothing to do. Once or twice she had peeped into the book her sister was reading, but it had no pictures or conversations in it. And what is the use of a book, thought Alice, without pictures or conversation? So she was considering in her own mind, as well as she could, for the hot day made her feel very sleepy and stupid, whether the pleasure of making a daisy chain would be worth the trouble of getting up and picking the daisies, when suddenly a white rabbit with pink eyes ran close by her. It took a watch out of its waistcoat pocket and muttered,
oh dear, I shall be too late."
Alice ran after it, for she had never before seen a rabbit with either a waistcoat pocket or a watch to take out of it, and was just in time to see it pop down a large rabbit hole under the hedge. In another moment, down she went after it. The rabbit hole dipped suddenly, and before she could think about stopping herself, Alice found that she was falling down a very deep well. Down, down, down went Alice for a long time, when suddenly, thump, down she came upon a heap of dry leaves, and the fall was over. Alice jumped up and ran after the white rabbit, who suddenly turned the corner of a long passage and then disappeared. Alice found herself in a long, low hall with doors all around it, but they were locked, and she wondered how she was ever to get out again. On a little three-legged table made of solid glass, Alice saw a tiny golden key, which she tried in all the doors, but alas, it didn't fit any of the locks. It did, however, open a little door about 15 inches high behind a curtain which Alice hadn't noticed earlier. She knelt down and through the doorway saw a passage leading to the loveliest garden you ever saw. How she longed to wander about in that garden, but she couldn't even get her head through the doorway. She went back to the table where she had found the golden key, and now saw a bottle with the words, "Drink me," beautifully printed on it. Alice tasted the liquid in the bottle, and as it was very nice, she soon finished it off.
"What a curious feeling! I must be shutting up like a telescope,"
said Alice, and so it was indeed. Soon she was only 10 inches high, just the right size to go into the lovely garden, but having left the little key on the table, she was now too small to reach it. But soon her eye fell on a little glass box under the table. It contained a very small cake with the words, "Eat me," marked on it in currants. She ate a piece, wondering if she would grow bigger or smaller, but nothing happened, and so she soon finished off the whole cake.
"Curiouser and curiouser. Now I'm opening up like the largest telescope that ever was. Goodbye, feet."
Alice grew so quickly that she was soon over 9 feet high, and she at once took up the little golden key and hurried off to the garden door. But now she was far too big to pass through it. She sat down and began to cry, shedding gallons of tears, until there was a pool all around her, about 4 inches deep. She heard a pattering of feet, and suddenly the white rabbit returned, splendidly dressed, with a pair of white kid gloves in one hand and a large fan in the other. He came trotting along in a great hurry, muttering to himself,
"Oh, the Duchess, won't she be savage if I've kept her waiting?"
"If you please, sir."
"Oh!"
The rabbit started violently, dropped the gloves and fan, and scurried away into the darkness. Alice picked them up, but when she realized that holding the fan made her shrink again, she dropped it hastily, just in time to save herself from shrinking away altogether.
"That was a narrow escape. Now for the garden,"
said Alice. But the little door was shut again, and the golden key was lying on the glass table as before. Trying to reach it, her foot slipped, and in another moment she was up to her chin in the pool of tears she had wept when she was 9 feet high. She discovered that a mouse had slipped in too, and so had a crowd of other animals and birds. They were all struggling to save themselves from drowning. Alice led the way to the shore, and the whole party followed her. One of the birds, a dodo, made them all do what he called a caucus race to get dry. Everybody had to run round in a sort of circle for half an hour until the dodo decided the race was over. The dodo said everybody had won, and Alice thought the whole thing very absurd, but at least they were all dry again. The mouse began telling a long and sad tale, but as Alice didn't attend very well, it got offended and walked away.
I wish I had our cat Dinah here. She'd soon fetch it back.
The other animals and birds didn't like that remark at all and hurried off too. Alice was soon left alone. Once more she began to cry, for she felt very lonely. But when she looked up, there was the white rabbit trotting back again, looking anxiously about as it went, as if it had lost something.
The Duchess, oh, my fur and whiskers, she'll get me executed. Where can I have dropped them?
The rabbit was looking for the fan and gloves, but they were nowhere to be seen. Everything seemed to have changed since Alice's swim, and the great hall had vanished completely. Very soon the rabbit noticed Alice and called out to her angrily, mistaking her for his housemaid.
Mary Ann, what are you doing out here? Run home this moment and fetch me a pair of gloves and a fan.
Alice was so much frightened that she ran off in the direction the rabbit had pointed to, and soon came to his neat little house. She hurried upstairs and into a little room where she found a fan and 2 or 3 pairs of tiny white kid gloves. But she also found a bottle there, so she drank half of it, hoping it would make her grow again. It did so indeed, and soon she had grown much too big for the little room and had to lie down, putting one arm out of the window and one foot up the chimney. It was very uncomfortable.
Mary Ann, fetch me my gloves this moment.
The rabbit came running upstairs, tried to open the door without success, and then went round the house to get in at the window. Alice spread out her hand and made a snatch in the air with her fingers.
Whoo, whoo! Pat, where are you? Come and let me out of this cucumber frame. Oh, now tell me, Pat, what's that in the window?
Sure, it's an arm, Your Honour.
An arm, you goose. Whoever saw one that size? Why, it fills the whole window.
Sure it does, Your Honour. But it's an arm for all that.
Well, it's got no business there. Go and take it away.
Sure, I don't like it, Your Honour, at all.
Do as I tell you, you coward.
Alice stretched out her hand again and made another snatch in the air.
Oh!
And though the gardener Pat and his master fell into some more cucumber frames, her troubles were by no means over. The rabbit commanded another servant, a lizard called Bill, to climb on the roof and go down the chimney. Alice heard the little animal scratching and scrambling about in the chimney above her foot. She gave one sharp kick and sent him flying through the air like a skyrocket.
There goes Bill!
Poor Bill came down by the hedge and was given some brandy, while the rabbit organised the next attack on Alice. Next moment, a shower of little pebbles rattled in at the window. But all the pebbles turned into little cakes as they lay on the floor, and Alice quickly swallowed one of them. As she had hoped, she began shrinking directly, and soon she was small enough to run out of the house. There was quite a crowd of little animals waiting outside with the poor lizard Bill in the middle, being held up by 2 guinea pigs. They all made a rush at Alice, but she ran into the wood and didn't stop until she was safe. Looking round for something to eat or drink so that she might grow again to her right size, she noticed a large mushroom near her. She stretched herself up on tiptoe and peeped over the edge of it. Her eyes immediately met those of a large blue caterpillar that was sitting on the top with its arms folded, quietly smoking a hookah. They looked at each other for some time before the caterpillar took the hookah out of its mouth and said,
"Who are you?"
I hardly know, sir, just at present. I think I must have been changed several times since this morning.
What do you mean by that? Explain yourself.
I can't explain myself, because I'm not myself. Being so many different sizes in a day is very confusing.
It isn't. So, you think you're changed, do you?
I'm afraid I am, sir. I can't remember things as I used to.
Can't remember what thing.
I've tried to repeat poems, for instance, but they all came out different.
Repeat. You are old, Father William.
You are old, Father William, the young man said, and your hair has become very white, and yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age it is right? In my youth, Father William replied to his son, I feared it might injure the brain. But now that I'm perfectly sure I have none, why, I do it again and again. You are old, said the youth, as I mentioned before, and have grown most uncommonly fat. Yet you turned a back somersault in at the door. Pray, what is the reason of that? In my youth, said the sage, as he shook his grey locks, I kept all my limbs very supple by the use of this ointment, 1 shilling a box. Allow me to sell you a couple. You are old, said the youth. One would hardly suppose that your eye was as steady as ever. Yet you balanced an eel on the end of your nose. What made you so awfully clever? I have answered 2 questions, and that is enough, said his father. Don't give yourself airs. Do you think I can listen all day to such stuff? Be off, or I'll kick you downstairs.
That is not said right.
Not quite right, I'm afraid.
It is wrong from beginning to end. What size do you want to be?
Well, I should like to be a little larger, sir, if you don't mind. 3 inches is such a wretched height to be.
It's a very good height indeed. It's exactly my size.
But I'm not used to it.
You'll get used to it in time.
The caterpillar yawned. Then it got off the mushroom and crawled away in the grass, remarking as it went,
One side will make you grow taller, and the other side will make you grow shorter.
One side of what?
Of the mushroom.
Alice stretched her arms round the mushroom and broke off a bit of the edge with each hand. She nibbled at the right-hand bit, and the next moment her chin struck her foot, and as she continued to shrink, she quickly swallowed a bit from the left hand, and in a matter of seconds her head shot up above the trees. These sudden changes were most unpleasant, and so she carefully nibbled at one bit, then at the other, until she had brought herself down to her usual height. Then she wandered about, looking for the beautiful garden she had seen beyond the little door earlier that day. When she came upon an open place with a little house in it about 4 feet high, she wondered whose it was, and so as not to frighten the people who lived there, she nibbled at the right-hand bit of the mushroom, which brought her down to 9 inches high. For a minute she stood looking at the house and wondering what to do next, when a footman with the face of a fish came running out of the wood and rapped at the door. It was opened by another footman, who looked like a frog. The fish footman produced a great letter containing, so he said, an invitation from the Queen for the Duchess to play croquet. When he'd gone, Alice went to the door and knocked timidly. The frog footman, who was sitting on the ground by the door, kept staring stupidly into the sky and said to her,
There is no sort of use in knocking, and that for 2 reasons. First, because I'm on the same side of the door as you are. Secondly, they are making such a noise inside, no one could possibly hear you.
Please then, how am I to get in?
Are you to get in at all? That's the first question, you know.
It's really dreadful the way all these creatures argue. It's enough to drive one crazy.
and Alice opened the door and went right into a large kitchen full of smoke. The Duchess was sitting on a stool nursing a baby, and the cook was leaning over the fire stirring a large cauldron which seemed to be full of soup. There was certainly too much pepper in the soup, and there was certainly too much of it in the air. Even the Duchess kept sneezing occasionally, and as for the baby, it was sneezing and howling without a moment's pause. A large cat was sitting on the hearth. It didn't sneeze, but it was grinning from ear to ear.
Please, would you tell me why your cat grins like that?
It's a Cheshire cat, and that's why. Pig!
When Alice saw that the last word was meant for the baby and not for her, she took courage and went on.
I didn't know that cats could grin.
They all can, and most of them do.
I don't know of any that do.
You don't know much, and that's a fact.
The cook took the cauldron of soup off the fire and at once set to work throwing everything within reach at the Duchess and the baby. But they seemed to take no notice, even when they were hit. The Duchess began singing a sort of lullaby to her child and giving it a violent shake at the end of each line.
Speak roughly to your little boy and beat him when he sneezes. He only does it to annoy because he knows it cheeses. Here, you may nurse it a bit if you like. I must go and get ready to play croquet with the Queen.
The Duchess flung the baby at Alice, who caught it with some difficulty. The baby kept snorting and grunting as Alice carried it out into the open air. Looking down into its face in some alarm, she saw that it had turned into a pig. Alice set it down and felt quite relieved to see it trot away quietly into the wood. The Cheshire cat was sitting on a bough of a tree a few yards off. It grinned when Alice asked it which way she ought to go now.
In that direction lives a hatter, and in that direction lives a March hare. Visit either you like, they're both mad.
But I don't want to go among mad people.
Oh, you can't help that. We're all mad here. I'm mad, you're mad.
How do you know I'm mad?
You must be, or you wouldn't have come here. Do you play croquet with the Queen today?
I should like it very much, but I haven't been invited yet.
You'll see me there. By the by, what became of the baby?
It turned into a pig.
I thought it would.
The cat vanished quickly, but suddenly appeared again.
Did you say pig or fig?
I said pig, and I wish you wouldn't vanish and appear so quickly. You make one quite giddy.
All right.
This time the cat vanished quite slowly, beginning with the end of the tail and ending with the grin, which remained some time after the rest of it had gone. Alice went in the direction where the March hare lived, and soon came in sight of his house. It had chimneys shaped like ears, and the roof was thatched with fur. It was a large house, and so she nibbled some more of the left-hand bit of mushroom, raising herself to about 2 feet high. Even then, she walked towards it rather timidly, saying to herself,
As we're in May now, I hope the March hare won't be raving mad. At least not so much as in March. But suppose it should be. I almost wish I'd gone to see the Hatter instead.